experiment.
It?
Oh, hold on, not yet, not yet. I'm just going to explain what I want.
Okay.
So I want you to talk about what your topic was, and then go into your literature review. Then talk about how you set up your experiment, how you did your procedures, your results, and what you learned. Okay? Perfect. And I'll guide you through. I've been doing kind of Q&A as I go because I think it's more organic. All right? So let's get started.
Okay, so in my experiment, I did about fingerprints, about related fingerprints, because I was really interested because I'm obviously a twin and I have siblings, and I wanted to see if, because they say that like there's no two identical fingerprints, but I wanted to see if there's really a similarity between siblings.
Okay.
So I tested fingerprints. I took 5 unrelated groups of people, which was like a girl and a girl. And
unrelated, like not related. Not related by blood.
Yeah, by blood. Okay. Yeah. And I realized that there's nothing related at all between them. And then I took 5 pairs of related siblings. So, and while I was analyzing it, I realized that they're not identical, but they have like a lot of similar patterns. And then I also took twins to see. I couldn't take a lot of twins because I didn't know that there was a lot of twins.
Are you involved with any of the twin organizations, you and your sister?
No.
So I just want to point that out while you're looking at that, and I've let Ebony and Emerald know this too. There are actually scholarships for twins available, so that's something that you guys want to look at.
Oh yeah, yeah,
as you
yeah.
get into your junior year.
It,
and there's organizations that also help provide money for twins to go to college, and knowing that there's always 2 at the same age, there's just a lot of that cool stuff out there. They've done some research within those organizations that backs yours. So did you talk to me about your literature review and what kind of stuff you studied?
I studied about first I studied like the background of the fingerprints, what they're used for.
Talk to me about that.
And they're usually used for like identification, to give information about people, and they're used like in the authorities to see, or like if you're gonna go to the bank, they get your fingerprint to see like your checks and your stuff in your bank, and then in the authorities to see like your information about like your record and stuff. So it's usually used for identification and your records, but it can also be used like a signature, because I saw it in one a pretty long time ago. I think it was used for a signature. I don't remember.
And some banks are still doing that, where before you can cash a check, you have to do your fingerprint.
Yeah, it's used like a signature.
Talk to me about the picture in the middle of the page. What's that from?
This picture, you gave it to me as a resource because it's going to help me see the different patterns in the fingerprints. And as I looked at it, I can refer to it and see, okay, there's this pattern in this fingerprint, and compare it to the other pattern and see, okay, there's a difference, but they also have these similar patterns that I see in this.
Awesome. Have there been did you find any case studies or anything in your research about criminals that had been caught, or brothers or sisters that have been caught, or anything about criminals in relationship to fingerprinting?
No, I didn't really look up like.
You weren't going that research route.
Yeah, I was like just searching more about like similarity and stuff like that.
And anything else in your literature review that you learned from the research you did?
Well, just like how it's connected to genetics, because it's like part of your skin, so it's like it still reproduces and it still goes through the same reproduction as our skin, so it can also, that's the way that it helps us see our identification and who we are, and things like that, because it's part of our skin and part of it keeps growing. And
does a fingerprint, usually when you do a fingerprint on ink, does it leave part of your cells behind?
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
So conceivably we could pull DNA evidence from fingerprints. Excellent. Talk to me please about what how you started before you started collecting data. Did you do your own fingerprints? How did you get started practicing? Because you had to do a lot of fingerprinting. Talk to me about that.
Well, we did labs, and I actually used the labs as my evidence.
Good.
And I used these 2 labs, which were the fingerprinting labs and genetics background, to see how it was connected and how it connected with the fingerprints. And I used the fingerprints because it taught us how we should do like the fingerprints and the procedure that we should use. And I kind of like went through that procedure, and I was like, I tried to teach the people that I was using. And
so you didn't just test 10th graders?
No, I
Great.
didn't.
Tell me about how you set up your experimental design.
Well,
so your hypothesis first.
My hypothesis was that if fingerprints are part of the skin, and like traits come from the inheritance of our parents, then our fingerprints should be inherited, and they shouldn't just be random.
Awesome.
Because they're part of our skin and they reproduce, and just like we inherit traits, we should inherit fingerprints.
So you thought you would see common patterns?
Yes.
Amongst family members?
Yes.
Perfect, okay.
Yes.
Were you just testing siblings or did you test other family members?
I was going to test parents, but it was kind of hard to get parents because I don't see them rarely in school. And I'm like, okay, I don't know who this parent is, a parent of whatever student.
And then you modified your experiment?
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Yes. Well, I got the experiment from Science Buddies, and it didn't talk at all about twins, but I kind of wanted to test it because I'm obviously a twin, so I wanted to see if there was any similarities. And also, I didn't test parents. I tested fingerprints. In the beginning, I was going to test parents, but I realized that it was a little bit more complicated.
So if you had a year to do the same experiment over again, tell me 3 things you would do differently or set up differently. You have a whole year. You have as much money as you need to do this kind of experiment. What are 3 things you would do differently?
Well, first of all, I would get a lot more people.
Okay. Define how many? Like hundreds, thousands?
Like 500 maybe?
Right on. And how many did you test in this experiment?
10 overall, like using unrelated and related.
Good.
And yeah, I would use that many people. I would also have a better like identification process so that I wouldn't have to identify it, and there would be like a sort of like computer or technology to identify.
And that's a great idea. I know that we have CODIS and there are some out there, and that would be something that if you do choose to do a follow-up experiment with this in chemistry and physics, the school would have access to you. So once you learned about that, there's also people who are designing these kind of things, especially with touch screen technology.
Yeah.
Were there any apps that you saw out there?
No, I didn't go in depth with more. I was just like centered in what I wanted to find out.
Might be something you might want to design someday, is an app that you could actually take a picture of a fingerprint and have it analyzed. That would be really cool. Yeah. But technology is definitely being used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about how, if I were one of your, a third thing, if you had millions of dollars and a whole year to do the experiment.
The amount of people, the technology, and I think just get more background, like research about it. Just research more about it, research more about like where it comes from, and like more background to see how it comes to connect that we have inherited.
Maybe even what genes, genetics, what gene, now that we know the genome, like what's passing it on. Yeah. I think that's great. Talk to me about, now I'm one of your test subjects, let's pretend, and tell me what my process would be participating in your experiment.
Well, I would like first get like, I would tell you what the experiment is about. I would tell you that I'm testing it to see if you have any related fingerprints. If you're unrelated, then I would just tell you, I just want to see like the difference between the unrelated and the related. But if you're related, I would ask you who is your sibling, how old is he and stuff, so that I can see what grade he is in or she is in, and see if I can get their fingerprint and how I can like fit it in my.
Excellent. And talk to me about your quantitative data. What's some of the data that you found out, like percentages, or what's some of the quantitative data that you found out?
Actually, that's very interesting because I looked at the siblings and I realized that almost like 90% of the patterns in their fingerprints because I only took the right hand.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, in all the fingers, almost like 90% or 99% of their patterns are similar.
Really?
Yeah. Like, some of them had like 1 or 2 that weren't similar, but the rest of them had similar patterns.
And were you looking at one finger, or were you looking at a whole hand?
Yeah, I was looking at one finger at a time.
Oh, one finger at a time. So you would take them and compare the siblings, and they were showing pretty significant.
Yeah, and then
that surprised you.
Yes, it did, and especially when I looked at the twins because they had 100%. Because I found one pattern in every single finger that was similar to them.
Wow. But there was still, even within the identical twins.
Yeah, there was still differences between them, but they had a pattern.
So if your sister Vanessa did a crime, would it be different enough in your fingerprinting so that you wouldn't be busted for
Which
it?
I probably wouldn't do.
Well, yes, because there's like a way to identify, because none of the fingerprints will be identical.
So none of them were identical, even with you and your sister.
They weren't identical, but they had similar patterns.
And you tested another set of twins as well, fraternal set? Yeah, talk to me about that. What did you see different on that?
Well, they had like a little bit different. Some of the, let's say that they had similar patterns, but some of the patterns were smaller than the other patterns.
Oh, got it. So it was a size difference.
Yeah, size
but
difference.
Similar patterns.
Yes.
Excellent. So overall, what's the biggest aha that you took away from this project? What did you learn that really surprised you?
that even though fingerprints are not identical, there's a lot of similar patterns in the fingerprints of siblings.
And if you had the opportunity in college to do a science fair project, would you take the one that you've already done and do research on it? And if so, is there a different direction you would go? Different types of people you would test? Just curiosity, how would you do future research on this?
Yeah, maybe I would take this more research in it and look at maybe more in twins to see the differences and how they connect and things like that, not only in siblings, but more in twins.
Excellent. And I will encourage you, especially next year when you go into 11th grade and 12th grade, when you guys start studying the Holocaust, it'll be disturbing to you, but I really encourage you to read some of the twin experiments that were done during World War II. And like I said, it's incredibly disturbing and really, really sad. Yeah. But what Hitler was able to do with Auschwitz and with Mendel, he started with fingerprints and with twins and then went much deeper into human atrocities. And I know many twins who've read it, and it's really a bittersweet thing, but you'll find some of your research in that. And he didn't just test that, he actually tested brainwaves and all kinds of stuff with twins. Oh, okay. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Very nicely done, Evelyn. Thank you very much. Yep,
Thank you.
Go. All right. All right, so Stephanie Delaza, are you in here?
Yeah.